that was kind of hard.
Yeah,
So,
those bright lights bother me more than they did when I was younger.
yeah, so I just decided maybe, time to call it a day. But yeah, I enjoyed the meetings and you know, talking to other photographers there. I think that's part of the club. So, but thanks, Rick.
The lights are better if you have an SUV or some big car. They're not really good in a short car.
Yeah, I have a Camry, Toyota Camry, so
Yeah.
just hanging in there with the rest of them. Better hurry up, Eric. You only got 3 more minutes.
I know, I'm gonna finish my dinner. Mercury's supposed to join us too, so I hope he remembers.
Okay, I have a question. Once you were demonstrating something and you were showing us how to put items into the library, so you could use them like for new skylines and, new skies and different things. But I never figure out how to where do you get the images to drop them into the library?
So you're talking about sky replacement.
Yeah, and you showed that you had a logo or something that you used a lot, so you just dropped it into the library. There were a number of things that you used repeatedly that you just dropped in the library. So I thought, oh, that sounds like a good idea, but I have no idea how to get them there.
I don't think that was me demonstrating that, but in sky replacement, there is a library where you can store your images. And after we get done with this, if you have a few minutes, I'll show you where that is in sky replacement. I keep my own library of images, just a file of images, and I will take those and just drag those into place. And I do have logos, I do have all kinds of things in there. And I have separate folders for everything, like clouds and sunsets and things that I would use on a regular basis of photos that I've taken over the years.
Good.
So, but that's just dragging them into your Photoshop file.
Where did they come from? Are they already opened in Photoshop on the top menu?
I'll show you. It's easy. You just do file open. You go up and grab and then you search through your files to the image that you want. And then you click on that and it opens it in Photoshop with whatever else you're working on.
So you're in Lightroom at this time?
No, in Photoshop.
Well, you have all these images open in Photoshop?
No, I'm just going to drag them in, the ones that I want. I'll show you.
Where?
I'll show you when we get to the end of
Okay,
of tonight. It'll only take a couple minutes, and
thank you.
I'll show you how I do that.
That sounds great.
Remind me if I forget.
Okay.
I made salmon stir fry.
Oh, sounds good.
It's good. Okay. Mercury is supposed to be here because we're going to be talking about one of his images, but since he didn't make it,
Well, you can finish your dinner give you another couple of minutes to see if he shows up.
well, I'll give him one more minute. I'll give him till 7:31.
Oh dear.
Then he'll be out of luck.
I'm finishing my dinner too.
And what was it?
It's lemongrass chicken.
Oh, that sounds good. Did you make it yourself?
No, it's one of those prepackaged things that
Oh,
we buy at Costco.
I
They're really
made
good.
my-
Those dinners are really good.
Oh, good. All right, Mercury. I think he forgot. He thought it was last
You
week.
know, Mercury tried to get on last week and I had to tell him it wasn't because you sent it out on a Wednesday and he thought it was that night.
Yeah, yeah. He emailed me, texted me, called me in a panic. And I said, that's next week. He goes, oh, okay. All right. I am going to go back. And I'm going to share my screen. And you'll probably remember this image that was Mercury's. And I had talked to him about it. And the judge was complimentary. And what we're going to look at is simple but deceptively detailed way to do selections. And that's the number one thing we're going to do. And what we talked about was that the foreground, the weakness in this photograph, if there is any, is that the horses are a little dark. The horses could be stronger. And there's a couple of ways to approach this. I'm going to do the easy way. So the quick selection tool is right up here in the upper left here. And I'm going to pick the quick selection tool. And if you look up top, it says select subject. It also says it down here, by the way. And this is your generative fill and generative panel down below. But I'm not going to use that because I don't want to do any generative work. And this was in color pictorial, so we can do whatever we wish to it. And I'm going to select subject, and you'll see what it tries to do here. And you can see what it got some of the subject. And so with this little, you can see my cursor over this horse here. Can you see that? Okay. I'm going to take that and I'm just going to click on the things that I want to make sure I'm adding. Now, one thing that I'm not going to add that you might think I might add is this little feather coming out of his hat. But I'm going to save that for later and you'll see why. I'm also going to add to it a little bit of this hill in the background. All of this down here. I need to get the bottom of the horses. And you can see that it did a decent job just by pulling that down and selecting that additional area. It added it all to it. Now, there's where the detail comes in. So I'm going to enlarge everything on my screen so we can see it better. And you can see that it's not perfect, certainly. And one thing I'm going to do to start with, though, is that, see this area of the sky near his face? I don't want that. So I'm on the quick selection tool, but instead of, there's a little tiny plus sign inside of that cursor, which you probably certainly couldn't see, but there's a plus sign in there. All I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the Alt key on a PC or Option key on a Mac. It's going to change it to a minus inside there. And then I'm going to click. And it's going to delete that from the selection. So I have none of that as part of the selection. I can see something where I'm going to have to make my cursor very small. Even less than that. I'm going to go with 3 pixels because there are little parts of his whip that are not being selected. So I'm going to just do a rough selection. I may have to come back and do some negative selecting. In other words, use that Alt key again and remove some of the selection. Okay, So there is a little bit of extra here. I'll make that bigger. I'm gonna run out of pixels soon because this is just the same size as we do for the competitions. So it's 1920 by 1200. So I'm gonna hit the Alt and I'm gonna just come up right close to that and take out a little bit of that selection on top and bottom. And I'm just gonna click on a couple places where it's close to each other. This does not have to be perfect because what you'll see is that, especially for a competition, it's not going to show up. If you're going to make a print, you may need to be a little more detailed than what I'm being tonight. But this will give you the idea and show you how to do selections. And there's a little bit more detail here. And you can see that feather that I'll come back to later. All right, so I'm going to look at the horse. I'm going to look at the rider. And I'm generally okay with the horse and the rider. There's an area inside of this loop, which I don't know what it is. And I'm going to need to deselect a little bit out of there. So I'm not selecting the orange sky in the background. Now, depending on your own preferences, you can decide how much of a difference you want to make. See this little ear of the horse here? I'm going to add at least a little to it. And then I'm going to delete a little bit of the background there. It's really tough to get these little hairs on the horse, so I'm not going to worry about that. We could do something about that if we had an hour just for that, but we don't, so we're not going to spend the time doing that. And a lot of this is all dependent on your own desire for higher and higher amounts of detail, because you can go crazy. And sometimes I do.
Eric, are you using a stylus and a tablet?
No, I do have a Wacom tablet and a stylus, and I'm just using a mouse, and you can be very effective with the mouse.
Thanks.
All right, I will finish this up. I'm not going to worry about this one little hair that's going up there. I can blend that later if I really want to. I'm going to minus or deselect this area. And you can see that the tool will look at the colors and try to figure out what you're trying to do and not go beyond it, and try and stay within the area that you're trying to select. This ear, for example, it tried to just follow the basic lines of that particular ear. Let's go over here and get this one. And I'm just going to move quickly now so I don't spend all of our time doing that. But you get the idea. And that's a deselect there, or a minus and Alt. There's also a little tool up here in the upper left. See, there's a tool with a minus sign there. If you click on that, then you can do it. I use the keyboard command because it's faster, but you can choose to use those up there. Okay, I'm gonna, like I said, I'll move quickly through here. And that'll be just about close enough. And we'll go back out. So I've selected the horses in the rider. And in this case, Mercury's name, because I took this off of our website and it has his name in it, so, which is fine for what we're using it for anyway. But the first basic tool that I want to use, oh, and I'm going to show you a little trick if you don't know it already, is that down the lower left-hand corner, it tells you what size the image is. It's at 100% right now. Well, if I want to fill my screen, I could do Control plus, but it's going to make it too big. I can do Control minus, it's too small. But I can come over here and just tell it exactly what I want it to be. And I can say 130% and then hit enter and it'll make it about the size I want. Okay, so the horses are selected. Now I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Brightness and Contrast. And this is the single most used tool in the pile of all those tools. This is very easy to use. It's just a couple of sliders. It's also helps improve images and it does not blow out the range of things. So it's really effective use. So I'm going to brighten it up. And as I brighten it up, I'm going to go way out here. Too much, right? So I'm going to bring it back to a decent place, but it washes out a little bit. So that's where the contrast comes in. And we need to increase the contrast a little to get those, especially this white horse and this particular horse, getting those both to look a little better. You know what I didn't do? I didn't show you I can show you the before and after in a different way, but I meant to show you the before and after by making a layer that duplicated it, but I can show you anyway. What do people think? Do we need more brightness, less brightness? How do you feel about the horses?
I think a little less, not too much, but a little less.
Okay, somewhere in there. And now you can take the contrast up too far because it makes the horses start to turn kind of orangey red. And you can matte them out. If you ever need to soften something dramatically, you can use contrast to do so. But in this case, I think we need a little contrast. And I'm going to say,
Want to bring down the brightness just a little?
take the brightness down
Yeah, just a little.
of just the horses because the background's different.
The background's fine. I just wanted to take down the horses with all that white dirt under their feet with the,
Okay, so image adjust, brightness and contrast. I'll take down some of that brightness.
See, I liked it.
You liked it better before? Yeah, it's all,
I mean, I liked it with what you were doing.
I
yeah,
like, yeah, I like that. I think that looks a little more natural because the background is bright, but it's not as bright as you had it when the first time, I think.
okay. So now here's a trick. We've got these horses and the rider all selected. So now we can select, go up to select tab and select the inverse, which I often use. And let's do that same image adjustment, brightness and contrast. And we may not want to change the sky much, but we may. So let's just say, let's bring the brightness down. Changes the color while we're doing that too. I'm just going to bring it that's way too far, obviously. It was at 0, which you can zero that back out. It was there, but a little bit of darkness in the sky might not be too bad. and we can contrast it as well. That'll soften it, make it a little foggier. That'll make it too bright. Or we may not have to change that at all. So that's a possibility, is -11 in the brightness and +5. But I'm going to cancel that and let's go back to what it was. Yeah, I don't know if it gained that much by doing that. Okay, so I'm going to say that's where we are right now. I'm going to come back here to my marquee tool, and I'm just going to click off. And then I'm going to come back to that feather I talked about. And that feather is very soft. And I think it needs a little something, but it's going to be difficult to do. So I'm going to do two things. First, I'm going to take over here, and there's a sharpen tool. There's a blur tool, which is what this little droplet looks like. And underneath it, there's a sharpen tool. And yours may be just opposite of that. I just happened to use the blur tool most recently, so that's why it was set up. And I am going to give this some sharpening. Now, it's not going to take it from blurry into sharpen, but what part of what it does is it'll darken it a little. And so that'll stand out more. I could also use the dodge and burn tool if I wanted to. And in this case, you have to go back up here to the options. First of all, choose a small brush size, which is fine. In here, we have midtones, shadows, and highlights. So you have to decide what you want to brighten or darken. And right now, that's the dodge tool. I'm going to go to the burn tool. Sorry, I had the wrong one open. And you have to be careful. Don't get your exposure up very high. So I have it 24% right now, and we'll see what that does. And I'm just going to try to darken the midtones in there. And at this zoom level, it's kind of pixelated and everything. But when we go back out, it'll look much more natural. And in the larger version of this, in the raw file that Mercury has, he could make it look very nice by working that. Okay, one other thing I see right now that I did not see before is that this is actually a chain in his whip. And so now there's these bright spots inside. So I'm going to go back and clone those. And just take the clone stamp. And I'm going to make it pretty small. And my background is very soft because it's the sky. So you always want to keep your hardness very down to as low as possible. So it's 0, which is low. You can also have a choice of your opacity. You don't have to make it 100%. In this case, I will because I think I want to fill in that chain. And so you hit your Alt key, and that it creates a target, and it chooses the spot you're going to clone from. So you hold down your Alt key, you click, and then you let it go, let the Alt key go, and then I'm going to paint in the chain. And I'm going to paint below the chain a little bit. And 4 pixels is too much. So I'm going to go down to 2 pixels. And then I'm going to choose another spot here. And I'm going to fill that in. Now it's putting in 100% of wherever that plus sign is that's following me. Do you see that plus sign? It's always going to use that area to fill in. So you have to be cognizant of where that plus sign is, because I don't want to choose a spot that's going to go over top of the whip or a horse or something else, because then I'm going to be cloning a horse or a whip. whip or something else. All right, I think that's close enough for what I had in mind. One more tiny thing right here in his hand. There was some brightness coming through. And you see how his feather stands out more. I don't know if you paid attention to it before, but it does stand out quite a bit more than it did before. Okay, let's go back to 130%. And you just choose 130 and hit enter, and it'll make it the max size that I've got it here. And now we'll do a little before and after, and I need to
By the way, nice image, Eric.
oh, you are here, Mercury.
Long story, I'm sorry, yes, but thank you for, pleased to see my image being worked on.
I'm going to show you the before and after. So let's gonna move it over there. So there's a history panel over here, if you can see that. Oh, there we go. I can see it now because I had to minimize you guys. You were covering my history panel. So here's our history panel. And I can go all the way back to the beginning. So take a good look at it. Look at the horses, look at the sky, look at the rider. And we might even go back and illuminate his face a little bit more, and so now here's the before.
Oh, yeah.
And then here's the after. So that
Sure.
helped. And I might go back and do his face. So let's do that, and then we'll move on to the other image.
It's magic, Eric.
It's all magic.
Brought
So
out a lot of detail as well.
it did. Did you notice the feather? Were you here when I was talking about the feather, Mercury? Mercury? Hello?
Uh, I'm here, you there?
I am here. I couldn't hear you though. Okay,
I just said you brought out a lot of detail as well, and then I guess I lost audio.
yeah, I was asking if you were in on the conversation when I was doing the feather.
I just saw you were working around I couldn't find the login at first, yada, yada. But the whip, you were working on the
The
edges of the
chain,
make it more
yeah,
distinct,
yeah.
and
Okay, so
putting it
now,
in the background.
so for faces, we have several different things we can do. So the first assumption I'm going to make is he is turned towards the light. And so it would not make sense to brighten up his neck. That's going to be in shadow, right?
Right.
His hat is creating some shadow on his face as well. But we can go to the dodge and burn tool, and we'll go to the dodge tool. A face is made up of mostly midtones. Sometimes it's made up of shadows like under the eyes and things like that, or where a mustache could be, which I can't tell if he has one or not. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to
Looks
take,
like he does have one.
he does have one?
Looks like he's got a beard with a mustache.
Yeah, it looks like he may have a little bit. All right, so I'm going to try with midtones. My exposure is 11%. You don't want to go very high because you can paint multiple times over the same place to lighten. And so that's what
So I've lost audio again.
okay, I think that's on your side, not my side, I hope.
You're Cloud and Lear.
Okay. All right, so I brightened up his face a little. I don't want to go too far. And when we go back out smaller, I think it'll make a difference. Yeah, and I think that still looks realistic.
Yeah,
And
appreciate what you're thinking, which is his face is turned towards the light where his neck less so.
exactly, since his face is heading towards the light, we can get away with adding a little light to his face. And that's all subjective. You'll have to decide how much light makes sense. Okay. I'm going to save this image, Mercury, and I will send it to you if you want to look at it, or if you think some of the things that we did. This is being recorded, so you can go back and pick up where I started if you want
Yeah,
to.
I will want to, and thank you. That's recorded.
Okay. So I'm just going to do file save. And this is just a low-res JPEG that I took off the website. So you can look at your raw file, and actually your raw file will respond better than what I did here, because in your raw file, you'll have 16 million colors. And a JPEG is typically going to have 256 colors, so a lot more. All right. So thank you for letting me use your image, Mercury.
Pleasure be mine.
We'll move over to Carrie. And this is Carrie's image that was in just this last competition as well. And he had done a nice job of creating these textures and that sort of thing. Actually, I'll show. Carrie sent me the original. So Carrie, tell us all what you did to it, how you started with your concept, that sort of thing.
Well, I was looking for yellow umbrellas all day long, and I was just walking through the ferry building up in San Francisco, and I saw this person walk past the doors outside, and so I just ran after her and chased after her. So I was basically going for a yellow umbrella, and I didn't have much else in mind. But this is very close to what I wanted, a street scene. I wanted, to show the city, and kind of some hustle and bustle. Um, and I really lucked out with that streetcar. That wasn't at all planned. Um, but I wanted the yellow to really stand out.
Right. Yeah, it's
I
great.
was unlucky with those blue cones, but I just did some content-aware fill to get rid of those.
Okay.
And the
And then,
rest, I did, ordinary, Lightroom adjustments to just get tones and everything
yeah,
adjusted. Took it into Photoshop, got rid of the blue cones, and then I just applied the impressionist filter from the neural filters library.
okay. And this is the way it turned out. So it did a nice job. The filter did a nice job. Carrie did a nice job getting rid of the cones, everything else. And so now what we're going to talk about is some filters. So I'm going to leave Carrie's person as is, and I'm going to go back to a go-to item, which is over here, the select subject, the quick selection tool, select subject, and darned it if it didn't find that umbrella. And the only thing that a little bit of the bag is missing, a little bit of the bottom of the shoes is missing. So I'm going to enlarge this.
By the way, the bottom layer is still active.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, yeah, you can't see it though. It's covered.
Yeah,
Right?
but that's, I think, what the selection tool is basing it off
Okay, let's find out. Let's find out. Let's turn it off. And then I will do a new select subject and see. You were right. Was that Alan?
No, that was me.
Got everything.
Oh, okay. So we got a little bit that it didn't get right here, so I'm just gonna draw that in for the selection. And it kind of made a little bubble here, so I'm gonna do Alt, and that'll take it away. And we'll come back. There's some colors that are very close to each other right there, and so Photoshop's having a little trouble finding it. And okay. So everything looks copacetic here. So I've selected this person, the yellow umbrella and their bag. And so now we're going to look at filters. And Carrie chose to use the Impressionist filter. So I am going to go up to filters. And Impressionist is under stylize or,
It's in under neural filters.
oh, it's in the neural filters. Okay, never mind. Okay, so I am just going to go with something simple that people will be able to use for many, many things, by the way. So first thing I got to do is I don't want to touch Carrie's person because I think they look great the way they are. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the inverse. So I'm working with the background, not the umbrella person. And the first thing I'm going to do is just add a simple Gaussian blur. So under blur, you have lots of different choices. And Gaussian blur is this one. And it happened to be set at 8 because I played with this earlier. And you can see that it creates a bokeh effect around here and highlights the person a lot more. And if you had a short depth of field, you'd be able to do something like that. It may look a little odd since the sidewalk is blurry, but the person is not quite as blurry. So
Eric, are you starting from Carrie's Impressionist version or from the
yes,
original?
yes,
Okay.
I'm using his Impressionist version. I could do the same thing with the other version, but I'm using the Impressionist version because I like the way it kind of turns out. So, but this bouquet, you can use it for anything. You take a picture of a grandchild and you've got trees in the background or something. You just simply put a Gaussian blur, select the subject and then put a Gaussian blur on the back, and it solves a lot of issues and gets your focus right in one spot. The other thing, I'm going to reverse this. I'm going to do Control Z to the filter and come back to the original. Okay, so this is the original. It's selected in inverse. So we're back to doing things with the background now. And I'm going to show you another filter. Still within blur. So we have something called motion blur. And before I put that on, since we have a streetcar here, we have automobiles, we have things that are in motion. Carrie did a good job of freezing everything in place. But if you wanted motion, you could do that after the fact. So we do filter, blur, and motion blur. And it created this kind of look. So I'm going to say okay, and I'm going to turn off the. Now everything's in motion except for the person with the yellow umbrella. We are getting a kind
Halo.
of aura around the yellow umbrella. And we could choose to leave that. We could choose to fix it by cloning the streetcar edge. But I kind of like the idea because it makes it feel almost like this person has a little bit of motion too, but not as much as the cars or the streetcar.
Interesting. Would you mind as a sample, use the original image and paste Carrie under that and then do the Gaussian blur to the original image?
Uh-huh. So we'll go back to the original image. And we can select the subject. Okay, and we can select inverse. And then we can filter, and we can go to blur, Gaussian blur. And there's the way that looks. And I can turn it off or turn off the dancing ants so you can see what that looks like. Now I'll switch and go back, and we will do the motion blur, which I can, up here, by the way, whatever you did last, it keeps track of it up here.
Okay.
So theoretically, I can just hit motion blur and it should do it. But it didn't because because of the Gaussian blur, it's picking that up. So I have to go back further. So I can go into my history and turn off, just go back to that selection. Now we'll do the motion blur. And that's what that should look like. I think it's kind of a fun effect.
Yeah, that works pretty well right there.
Yeah, especially because the streaks in the crosswalk, it gives it an interesting feeling. Okay, so now I'm going to go back, and we've got select inverse. Now I'm going to show you something that gets rarely used, and this is a radial blur. And so take a look at this box over here. So you have a strength amount here, which you always want to start with a low amount. And this shape is called a spin shape, which is spin. You can also use zoom. And I just have for good quality because that's all we need of working with the low res image. And then what it'll do is it will, well, you'll see what it'll do. It'll do a radial blur. So now you've got this focus going. Now you've got this person walking through the vortex of space-time or something.
Having taken LSD.
Yeah. But it's an interesting thing that rarely comes up as a time to use it. But when I saw Carrie's image, I thought, you know, that's got a lot of appeal to many different types of filters. So that's why I asked him to allow us to play with his image. Okay, then, oh, by the way, I still have,
Can I ask you just so I can remember it? So Carrie went to neuro filters, and then what was the name of the filter he chose?
It was a style transfer filter.
Style.
To
I'll show it to
there's a
you.
there's a whole menu full of style transfer filters, and I think I chose the artist effect from Monet.
I'm going to get a little bit bigger brush here to, oh, we're losing part of the coat there. Okay, so there are a ton of filters in here. Play with them sometime. You know, I've spent a lot of time playing with them, and I think it'll be interesting to you. This oil paint one is very interesting. And you can see what this effect is up here in this box. That's the sidewalk or the crosswalk, and it has created these lines in it and textures, which are actually pretty cool. And if I say okay, it's applied them. See the sidewalk? Sidewalk's not got has all these things applied to it. The car has now got these things applied to it, the train, but not our walking person. And that's similar to the way neural filters work, but let's get out of here.
Even the cones look pretty cool.
Yeah, I like the way a lot of these things work in oil paint, by the way.
It's kind of subtle. It seems like I actually have unstable internet connect. I just got a message, so that's why I lost my audio. And I didn't hear the name of it blinked out for a little bit. What's the name of that filter that you just put on?
It's under style transfer filters, and there's a
Okay.
whole, you can choose artist or I forget what the other one.
If I have them loaded, I'll show them to you.
Yeah,
Murphy.
under artists, it shows a bunch of
Okay.
samples, and one of the samples is a Monet.
So what you really see it when you zoom in, but it did add an interesting effect.
Mercury, I'm getting the same thing you are, I think.
Oh, yeah?
What's the message?
It's an unstable internet.
Oh,
Working fine here.
yeah, mine's okay. All right, so let's go back and we will do the select subject. I'm going to go back to layers. So this is the original file. And I'm going to turn off that selection of just the person. Because Carrie, you applied it to your whole image, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, let's kind of repeat the image that Carrie had. So we're going to take these cones out, and I'm going to go over here to the remove tool. If you've not used the remove tool, this is your second most loved tool in the palette. It's an AI-based tool, and all I'm going to do is put a circle around that cone. Hello? I don't know why I didn't take that out.
Unstable internet.
Yeah, let's see.
Unstable application.
Oh, took that one out, no problem. Why isn't it taking that one out? Maybe it wanted me to close the edge better. No? Okay. Well, it didn't like that, but we can do it the old-fashioned way and just get the clone tool. And I'm just gonna pick a piece of sidewalk here. And I'm just gonna duplicate it. And it's gone.
Well,
Okay, so let's go up here to filters, neural filters. And it's going to load them up. And where did you said it was under artistic
Under,
style transfer?
yeah, style transfer.
Okay, so go under style transfer, we'll click that. Oh, I haven't downloaded it yet, but Carrie's right. Within it, you can see up here, this guy sitting on the dock. You can do, that's more of a hokusai, Japanese style.
Yeah.
You can do Monet style. There's lots of different styles. I'm not going to download it because it's 161 megabytes, but go there, download it. If you haven't played with the neural filters, do so. There's some that are good. There's some that are not ready for prime time. And it takes just a couple minutes to learn how to use them. They're really pretty good. So, okay, let's go back.
Eric?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Eric, I just had a quick question for you.
Yeah,
When you put the filters on, like when you did the motion filter, if
Yeah.
you wanted to leave the motion filter out of the bottom, like up to this person's jacket,
uh-huh.
how would you put in a gradient tool to do that?
Well, it won't really take a gradient because
Oh,
it's
okay.
too fine of a detail, but you could do a soft edge selection there.
No, I just wanted the sidewalk.
I'm sorry, say it again.
So in other words, like when you did the motion part, I wanted the sidewalk for the lower part of the person not to have any motion.
Right.
So could you use a gradient tool to do that?
No,
Oh,
here's, I'll show you real quickly how I would do it.
Okay, sure.
I would use a selection tool.
Got it.
But I would use a selection tool with feather. So let's do the quick selection tool to get the subject. So now it'll select this person. And then what Jeff is suggesting is that this bottom part of the sidewalk should not be blurred. And I agree with you, Jeff. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase or add to the selection. And I'm just going to drag across here. And I'm just going to approximate an area that would still be in focus. And there's a little bubble here, which I don't want. Okay, and then I can select the inverse. And then I can apply the motion blur.
Yeah, it looks better to me.
Yeah. Well, it's a little more realistic, but
Yeah.
we're letting go of realism a little bit, just we're adding filters to begin with, but
Yeah, I just wanted to know if you wanted to do it partially
yeah,
instead of the whole picture, how would you do it?
yeah. And that's it. You just create a selection that works better for you.
Okay, super.
Yeah.
Question?
Yes.
Eric, would I be correct that the work you did with Mercury's image would leave it qualified for the Picayune categories like journalism and nature, but the work you did with Carrie's is all going to relegate an image to creative or pictorial?
That's true. And Mercury's is kind of on the edge because I went in and sharpened that feather, and I don't think you can use the sharpen tool. You can lighten things, and all the new definitions that were approved by the board about a couple of months ago, and then we went through some trials and tribulations with some new things that came up from PSA and then N4C. But anyway, the new definitions are up, and look at them carefully. Tim and I and Kent worked on them. We could peek at them right now because we have a couple of minutes. I'm pretty much done with what I wanted to do with Carrie. Carrie, did you have anything else that you wanted to talk about the image?
Oh, no, thanks. Thank you for doing that. It was very helpful.
Good. And the other thing is I would just crop out this bottom stuff just because, and by the way, I don't use the cropping tool ever. I use the marquee tool so I can see exactly what I'm doing. And then I do image crop. And so that great and that discoloration is gone, and I think it helps the image. Let's go to the web. So I'm going to, I'll have to stop sharing and then come back, but let me go on there and see if I'm still logged in. I'm not, so I'll log in. And then let's look at some of those definitions. Okay.
While you're doing that, one question that came up was whether that was an action that was special to the photographer or something you just came upon.
Explain, I don't get what you're talking.
Mercury, there was a question about whether it fit in PJ or not.
Oh,
Rick asked that, and for me, the image that you're looking at, I entered into pictorial.
Right.
And so I think that's no question. And what Eric is going to look at is a little perturbing to me. What we talk about whether or not you could sharpen an image in nature. It just seems absurd to me that we're asking the question, but nonetheless, like, for instance, right now, a key feature in Lightroom is denoise.
Right.
And it cleans the noise out of the background and tends to also sharpen the image a little bit. It's just standard fare if you're a nature photographer.
Yeah, and technically PSA doesn't allow that. So, but let me stop sharing and then I'll bring up the screen of the website. Okay. And so let's go to nature. Nature is the longest possible definition because it has so many ifs and buts and everything else. So what is not allowed? Removing, adding to, moving, changing any part of an image except for cropping and straightening. That almost sounds like you can't do any of the things that we just did to Mercury's image. Can't add a vignette, can't blur parts of the image during
Now look
processing.
at the allowed part though. Oh, sorry. I
Yeah,
read wrong.
let's finish this part.
Okay.
Darkening, you're not supposed to be darkening to hide elements. A lot of this we could arm wrestle over what the words mean, but it's really, they're trying to be pretty strict about it. So, and by the way, this is I need to edit this and move this optional diptychs and triptychs down because right now it looks like it's part of not allowed, but okay. So allowed techniques. Removal, correction of elements added by the camera or the lens, dust spots, noise, those things, okay. Global selective brightness, hue, saturation, contrast. Okay, so that's allowed.
And see, both of those would fit within the denoise thing. Removing noises, you could say legitimately added by the camera.
Yeah, I think you're wishing on you're wishing that to be true.
Oh,
I
it's just
don't-
right there. It just says so as much. Dust spots, noise, chromatic aberration. I'm just reading it.
What if
Yeah,
you have a camera? What if you have a camera that doesn't have anything that you can denoise very well?
Well, I guess what it's saying is noise, but you're not going to put denoise on an image that's really good to begin with. Is that correct? You're only going to denoise something that is off a little. But I
No,
guess
actually,
not.
in all fairness, and I will just say this, so if I've got an image and I really like it, we just had a bird group last night and I had some eagle shots. And so if I really like an image, it's just like matter of fact to me to press denoise, it just cleans it up a little bit. In terms of the background, it's subtle, but like if it takes noise out, it also just kind of helps distinguish the subject a little bit from the background. It's very subtle.
Yeah, no,
But
I agree with you, Mercury. And I think that all in all, what's happened or what PSA started is that they are kind of getting going down a slippery slope of trying to tell you what you can and cannot do. And it's gone a little too far. But I think that given what you just explained, Mercury, I think I would read that the way you did then in that case, that noise could be corrected. So
I would think there's a difference between the old style pre-AI denoise, which just used information in your photo and tried to smooth things out that look like noise,
yeah,
versus what Topaz AI does. It fills in details based on its extensive knowledge of other similar photos. And I think that's what they're not wanting us to do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's adding and merging and combining, and those are
Yeah.
all explicitly forbidden.
well,
But they
it's,
call it denoise.
yeah, that denoise,
That's a
he's
misnomer.
right. The topaz denoise does look at pixels surrounding it, and it will duplicate and make new pixels in there, which theoretically would not be allowed, but in this case, it's fixing the noise. So there are a lot of what ifs, you know?
Mhm.
I think the phrase I see here is on the next bullet about selective adjustments and stuff to restore the appearance of the original scene.
Uh-huh.
And I think if you're restoring the appearance of the original scene, doing any of these techniques, it's probably okay.
And that's
But if
how I
you're
read it. I think that's an accurate assessment. If that's just like honest, I saw this image, I experienced this image, I'm trying to best represent this image. And, like what you saw was whatever, the tiger catching, you name it. That's the scene. And like if there's some stuff that when you get it to an image that distracts from being able to experience the scene, that's fair game as far as I'm concerned. Without copying or
Mercury,
removing or yada yada.
hey, Mercury, I saw your pictures yesterday. They were too good. That's just unfair to everybody else.
Thank you, Jeffrey. You said so yesterday. I appreciate it.
Yeah, is skill on this list?
Well, you know what? I would say if sharpening wasn't allowed, I'd never enter anything in nature.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it's silly to do it. So
Yeah, it doesn't say yes or no here, I guess. It says blurring is not allowed, and darkening in order to hide something. Although I don't think that's quite fair either. Mercury and I were talking about it in Debbie's size little Photoshop thing. There was that an egret?
Well, there was the leaf we were talking about, but
Yeah,
specifically remember regarding that, saturation and contrast can be adjusted. And so like, if you got a distracting leaf, well, you can at least soften the impact of the distracting leaf on the image without removing it.
yeah,
Just through contrast and desaturation or what have you.
you
right.
should at least be able to do all the dodging and burning that Ansel Adams was famous for.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. But
But not to hide elements in the original scenes.
yeah, so I think ultimately at some point, as we talked about when we were taking the PSA rules and putting them into ours, is that ultimately I think we're going to have to stand alone with our own rules. A and B is that know that the rules are going to be a moving target in some ways, especially when more AI comes on board. We're going to have to either allow some things or not allow a lot of things. So,
Honestly, it's the trickiest area because not only are we talking about what we're doing on our computer, but the technology of what we're taking out in the field is evolving all the time too,
of course,
high focus and all these features never used to be there. And so there's as an example, and this is kind of would be a fun one to talk about maybe. Sony has just come out with A9 III. And the A9 III, it's got this amazing feature that if you're looking at a bird on a perch and you want to catch it when it's going to launch, but you don't want to just like keep firing image and master image, for whatever, maybe 30 minutes before you decide to launch. So as long as you're focusing on the bird and, you're trying to time it so it's going to launch and then it launches, but it kind of catches you by surprise. So you miss the first part. In the A9, it's like an iPhone. It's capturing the first part as long as capturing it and erasing it,
yeah,
as long as you have the finger on the focus button, it's catching a few frames before you actually ever select.
right.
And so then, you're being totally helped by AI anticipating that you might use that image.
Yeah,
So, I mean, that's in the field. Like, is that allowed or not allowed? I mean, that's like whole new technology in a way.
I
yeah,
wouldn't really call that AI though. That's just taking frames in advance.
Yeah,
It's almost like filming a movie and picking the one frame you like.
yeah, that's it.
So
But but before you ever push the trigger. So
that's that's part of computational photography, and I've put some articles about that in the magazine before. And you're going to be seeing it in the Sony's the first one professional camera that's actually done a beginning part of that. And you're going to see a lot of it in the next few cameras coming up. So it will help us a lot. And a lot of people will say it's cheating, but we'll see.
Yep.
Oh, you know what? I was just watching a YouTube video on it, and that was the title. It was called "Is This Cheating?"
Yeah.
So the camera's set for burst mode of 120 frames
Wow.
per second. And you can set the camera to go a third of a second or half a second in advance. So the third of a second is 12 frames. So if you're looking at a bird on the perch with
No,
your finger,
a third of a second would be 30 frames or 40 frames.
well, oh, but he said it was 12. So anyway, the way he had it set up, because you have those little increments, as long as his finger's down there, before you press down, you're putting in 12 frames.
Right.
And then the other thing at 120 frames a second, you've got the whole experience of the bird taking off. The
Right.
feathers are out, the wings are out, the tail's up. It's amazing.
Yeah.
The downside, of course, is the memory cards are about $1,000.
Yeah, and the camera that can do 120 frames is $6,000. So a lot of factors. Well, anyway, we're going to have more of these discussions about these definitions, and it will go under committee again next year, I'm sure, and we'll have to adapt. And we're working right now on the ethics statement, finishing up the creative definition because that's still the old one. And anyway, we're going to add more things. Oh, there's going to be an AI statement too, which is going to be the PSA statement for now, and then we will adapt that as we go.
Well, I appreciate you taking your time, Eric, to go through this definition here.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for being here. And I'll go back to Mercury's image here for a second. I think this helped what we did with your image, Mercury. And Carrie, I wasn't trying to really improve your image. I was just trying to offer different filters because it was a perfect image to allow for filters. So, and you chose the right thing to do by doing the impressionist. I think that was nice. Did it place
Thanks.
somewhere, right? Did it get a second place or something?
No, it didn't. It didn't place.
Oh, it didn't place. Okay. All
Hey,
right.
Eric, I
There
had
was a
question.
lot of good competition that night.
There was. It was amazing.
As per usual. This is a nice rendition that you just got here with the motion blur.
Yeah, you'll find the motion blur works really, and I don't think you can use it in nature, Mercury, but if you could,
That would be fun.
it would
At
be,
a Laguna, Seca Raceway, right?
yeah.
Then you wouldn't need it.
I think we could simplify the whole competition rules thing by only having one primary category, creative, and then having subjects within creative with no rules.
Uh-huh.
Well, maybe they should have a category with just no rules.
Well, that's creative.
That's right. The Wild West. So Betty, are you still here?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so let's look at the sky replacement and we'll see if we can do this with Mercury's image, by the way. So it's under Edit, Sky Replacement. And then it has different skies in here.
Wow.
And that's just the default that came up. I don't think that's mine. I think that's just the one that's already in there. It might be mine. I can't remember now. So These are all the different skies that I had from different things.
How did you get
You'd
your
have to
sky,
find a
how did
sunset
you
or
get your
something.
own skies into the sky replacement?
Down here where it says plus at the bottom of the stack,
Uh-huh.
and then it says import sky images. So let's put one in. So I click plus, and then it says, okay, where are we going to find this? And I have a folder on my computer called Photos. And within that, I have my pictures, and within that, these are all this is my library, I guess, if you want to call it that, Betty.
Yeah.
This is, I've got from my work, this is appliances. These are washers, dryers, microwave, because my clients were in the chip business and they were inside of these things.
Hmm.
So, but let's go to clouds.
Oops.
And now here are all the clouds that I've shot across the years. I've got lots of different types of clouds. I even have my dragon cloud, which is,
No, I remember
I
that.
submitted that one to the competition long ago. So let's take,
So this is those images are in Lightroom?
No, they're on Eric's computer.
these are in a folder on my computer.
On your desktop?
Okay, sure, they could be. And let's add them to here. So let's take a oh, I already put that one in. Okay. Oh, yeah, all of these are, yeah, that's mine from a long time ago.
Try the one near the top of your screen there, which says IMG061 TIFF, like at least got yellow tones.
This one?
No, to
Next
the
up.
up,
Scroll up.
up. There you go, left middle, there you go.
This one?
Yeah.
Just leave right tones closer.
92 or 61?
61.
61.
Okay. All right, let me just double check to make sure I don't have, it won't tell me if I've got it in there or not. So I'm assuming I do not have it in
That
there.
worked that one.
Okay. So I'm gonna select that and then it put it in there.
That's closer.
That's a pretty cool match.
Yeah, not bad because
Cool.
the tones are pretty close.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking, right?
And then you can change, of course, when you're in the sky replacement, we can fade the edge a little bit more if we needed to. Let's see.
Getting this real AI shit here now.
You can adjust the color temperature and make it even more brownish red.
We could,
And then I found sometimes the scale, if you blow it up a little bit, you get
Yeah.
a little less detail.
yeah, scale really helps a lot.
Yeah.
I don't see much change in the color temperature. Oh, didn't let it go, that's why. Okay,
Okay, so these sky images are setting in they're not in Lightroom. They're in a separate folder somewhere, but not in Lightroom. Is that correct?
The settings that we're looking at here, you mean?
No, the sky, where you put your sky, all my images are in Lightroom.
Right.
So Betty, all you have to do is tell the program where the image is and it imports it. So it's wherever you have it, and then
Okay,
you import it into Photoshop.
okay,
Right.
so when I say add,
Yeah, you can go back to Lightroom.
And
You can
it'll
go back
still,
to your Lightroom catalog and pull
Yeah.
up the sky
Okay.
shots.
okay,
and
thank
it will find it there. It will not, it'll still be exactly where it's always been. And the program will just, in Lightroom or Photoshop, either one, it will go find it and drop it into your image.
okay, and so then you just select the ones you want and then say open and it drops it into the sky folder over on your,
Yeah, I just said,
Okay.
okay, and it dropped it in, so.
great. Oh, wonderful, thank you.
Do you want it with a sky in it, Mercury, when I send it to you?
Sure.
Okay. Well, actually, I think it looks better, your original.
I like my original. This time now we're like on the beach or I don't know where we're.
You can decide what sky you want in there. If you don't want this one. I
Well,
like
if I use your sky, we'll have to go someplace to show it together.
That's right. I do
Well, I
like
think-
this one though. And the dusty sunsetty sky. Was that sunset, by the way?
You guys got 2 minutes, I'll tell you a story here. So we're in Pantanal, Brazil, and it was our last stop. We had a gal that was born in the area and but then abandoned by her parents. She had some challenges growing up. Anyway, so she's a guide there, and she knows there's this guy that owns a big ranch, and that's where we were. She talked him into, it's a working ranch, getting his caballeros to do the stampede thing. And so she set it up, and she'd done this herself before though. So she wanted to do it in the late afternoon. So we would have the backlit dust. And so when we were there, the timing was such that we had some time before it was late afternoon. So first she got the caballeros to race them across a pond, which was also kind of fun, but not nearly as dramatic as getting the sunset behind all the dust. And so then she just got them to basically stampede the horses in our direction. And then the challenge was you needed a flexible lens because they started off, they were further away than they're approaching you.
Sure.
Anyway, she set this whole thing up, and it was, if you called it a photo shoot, it was the best time I've ever had. It was super cool.
Very cool. And it was free.
It wasn't PJ because it was set up, so you put.
Yeah, well, as
put it in
part
the
of
right
our trip,
place.
we paid for it when we signed up, but
Yeah.
and then he's ended up apparently charging her more, and she's like, he's yanking me. I don't know if she's going to offer it in the future, but it was a super neat event, and she was a great woman.
Yeah, cool. Very cool. All right, folks, we'll have another one of these next month, and I'll send out a notice like I usually do.
Okay, great.
Thanks
Thank
very much,
you.
Eric. That was good.
Thanks,
Thanks, Eric.
Eric.
These are
you,
great.
Eric.
I really appreciate them. Thanks.
You're very
Yes,
welcome.
thank you.
Take care.
Right.
Bye.
Good night.